3, 2, 1. Anthony Darby. I'm here with Cam Taylor of Free Thinkers Society. How are you?
Doing well, man.
Free
How are
Thinkers
you?
Conservation. Right?
Yeah, dude.
Free Thinkers Conservation. I want to make sure I get it right. FTC. I see on the shirt.
I appreciate it.
I know Mary Pat loves your logo. She's always into to thinking outside of the box.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Yep. So the logo, a lot of people ask me, they see like the Freemason kind of thing going on there, but yeah, it's basically a play on we're a group of people. We've been, growing, smoking weed and trading weed and selling weed throughout our whole lives, right? Like it's come glorified now because it's become a medicine, but together we've been kind of like this underground society of people that we still work together as a community just to kind of promote each other. So
yeah, it's like almost reminiscent of like medieval times. I mean, it's a very organic. You add the value to the group by adding value. It's not necessarily this like traditional economic transaction environment that we see in, right?
That's exactly
it.
And
so I know you well enough to know how passionate you are and to know how emotionally tied you are to the plant. And being a part of a group like that is super important, and I appreciate that. And now you have actually taken to that and brought something to market that I'm really excited about. And we're getting ready to light up a pre-roll right now with some Pink Panther. But I guess so when would the seeds probably went in like February, March of 21?
So most people usually do early spring, yeah. So what we did was we actually started in January. What we did was we lit up what we would call a hot house. So it's basically a hoop house. It's just like a plastic covered material. And then we put some lights in it to add some artificial heat, essentially, and then to actually make a vegetative light cycle. And then, we pop seeds actually at the very beginning of January. What I also was I did that too to actually promote the plants to grow a little bit faster. Cannabis, hemp, whatever you want to call it, because it's all the same plant.
Same plant, right?
It's all an
Just call it the cannabis plant from here on out.
Yep.
We'll know that if we're talking about it being grown outside in an unrestricted MMCC environment, we're talking about hemp, and if we're talking about something else, we'll be talking about
Yep. So all being the same plant, it's an annual plant. So just like all of your annuals you buy at Lowe's every year, it's only going to live for a certain amount of time. So I wanted to do a little bit of an experiment with one of the universities, essentially, where we started early and see if we can get the plant to finish a lot earlier in the season. And that proved true. So we did put our seeds down early January, and we actually got a really early harvest off this year. It was really cool.
Was that UMES?
That was Salisbury University.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
And they're doing research all around the genetic side.
They're doing a really cool probiotic experiments. What they're doing, they have I'm not sure if it's the soil itself or if it's the actual bacteria that they've been developing themselves, but they've found a way to essentially help kind of protect plants and help germination rates with these particular bacteria that they have.
This is really tasty. So this is Pink Panther. You can really taste the myrcene.
Yeah.
You could smell it when you were breaking it up. This is kind of a newer concept for me. So I wasn't really big on the smokable hemp probably 2 or 3 years ago before I really got into terpenes. But now as I kind of have a desire just to feel those terpenes, but as a kind of like a recreational activity or relaxing activity, I should say. The CBD flower, now that it's grown in a much more sophisticated manner, now that we are getting higher terpene profiles and it's not being grown like let's just throw some seeds in a field and hope for the best, and oh wow, we grew hemp that's at least mostly female. We'll call it a day.
Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I agree with you. So that's the cool thing about CBD now is it's not so psychoactive like THC. It's a totally different receptor. That's your CB2 receptor. So you actually get to feel a little bit more of the terpenes as opposed to just assuming that psychoactive high is all the same thing.
Yeah, and of course you don't need a card for it, right? It's completely legal. You can ship it across state lines.
Yep, 21 or over. Yep.
So we're going to now offer this in our wellness shop, so anyone can come in off the street. It was actually something that was brought to us by demand. I mean, like a lot of things, CBD flower has been on our radar for a few years, but it wasn't necessarily something that was in high demand by our patients. And more and more folks were coming into the wellness shop asking for CBD flower, and we just weren't. I wasn't comfortable with any of the sources that we had, quite honestly. I really wasn't confident with any of the sources that we had. The feel that was something that I wanted to carry in our wellness store, to carry in our wellness brand. And when I saw what you were up to, I knew that it was locally in the Salisbury area. I know your expertise and your passion and love for growing, and I was immediately excited. And then I saw the post on Instagram, and I was like, hit you up, and then you came off and dropped off some amazing samples. My staff went crazy. It was like a no-brainer. Like, this is something that's going to be really enjoyable. So last week you were kind enough to drop off, or this week, right?
Yep.
This week you were kind enough to drop off the first batch, so they are available now in our wellness store. And then we're having you back next week on December 8th from 10 to 12 to come and be able to interact with patients one-on-one and really share your passion in a unique opportunity. Like, I can't stress this enough, guys. Cam is one of the premier growers in the country, and your knowledge of genetics and the cannabis plant is a real good. It's a great balance, and I know that the things that you guys do outside the scope of any regulation, outside of any program, is amazing, right? The sophistication that you guys have with the seeds and how you guys have been able to build up seed libraries and share notes back and forth. When you're growing X, Y, and Z strain, we found that this soil is the best, and I had that same exact issue with a plant because I know, and those things are known for that, right? And you're quick to be able to help out. But also being able to work in that environment, the MMCC regulated environment, I think was helpful too. I've seen you grow up a lot, and I've seen
absolutely.
You have a higher sophistication, understanding of scale.
Yep.
And I think that that really makes you valuable and really great at what you do. And I always value folks that have done things in the freest of markets.
Yeah.
Right?
In a free-thinking society, right?
Yeah, in the freest of markets, and then apply that background into a regulated market, and still be successful. It shows that you have something that transcends, right?
Sure.
Everyone buys into, and I think that's what we've done here. I believe it. PDH.
And that's the interesting part about watching myself is, like, I'm a fairly humble guy, but taking the humble hat off, I've watched myself maturity-wise as a grower, basically triple in the last 5 years being in the legal industry. So being able to apply that now to an actual organic farm that I can do 100% my own inputs, it means a lot. And I think that's why the product itself kind of speaks the way it does.
Yeah, and now you're consulting, right? I mean, like...
Yep. So I've been consulting with the other...
Not necessarily a consultant.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I kind of feel like I'm in the same way. Like, it feels weird that people call me a consultant because that's my relationship with them.
Yep.
But it's really just sharing, like, lessons learned and, like,
advice,
trying to help somebody out, right?
Yeah.
And you're just like... I'm blessed enough that, like, people value my advice enough that they're willing to give me some compensation for it, not just free advice, and I think that's great. You have grown just tremendously over the last few years, and you should be proud of yourself and proud of what you've accomplished. And I'm excited to see how you help others, in these in the regulated industries, but then also the continuation of how you get to apply your plant science knowledge and your cannabis knowledge into to growing not just CBD. But so are there any intentions to try to grow any other flavors, be higher in minor cannabinoids, like a CBG or something?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that was what this particular crop was this year. I actually did a bunch of different genetics. We just decided that the Pink Panther was the best to bring to market. So that was also a part of my selection process, was making sure that what I valued was actually good enough to bring to market. Some of the CBG stuff that I had, I wasn't particularly stoked on. It didn't do well as far as, like, the caterpillars, which can give you kind of some mold issues on some of those. So I figured I wouldn't even bring that. It's
a fucking nightmare to be a fucking weed farmer.
It's hard.
I'm sorry to drop two F-bombs in the same sentence, but, like, I mean, my job is hard. Running a dispensary is hard. We deal with patients that can be challenging, interpersonal communication skills and things like that, man. But I'll be damned if I got to worry about caterpillars and mites and molds.
99 degrees and 80%
wind
humidity.
And, like, I mean, there's just, like, so much is out of your control.
And that's what I think my role on the Eastern Shore is, and that's where I think that I needed to build this company, was to help the other farmers do these selections to figure out what plants we can grow here. So, CBD is the big thing right now, but eventually, when cannabis is legal, we're going to continue with that as an agricultural industry. We grow everything here on the Eastern Shore. We will grow weed. So I just want to make sure that when that time comes around too, that I'll be able to continue helping out this group and community that we have with selections.
There's such a fragmentation within the cannabis space, because there are no federal programs, no federal companies. Everything is so much different. When I go out in Arizona and I see these monster greenhouses that just churn out flower, 6.2 gross cycles a year is what this guy's got going there. And it's
crazy.
Beautiful, right?
Yep.
You'd never pull that off of Maryland.
It's hard.
You just don't have enough sunlight. You don't have enough. You don't have enough.
You can do the light depth stuff.
And they have dryness issues out there, right? Like they have issues that we don't
100%.
We don't face here.
Yep.
It's just interesting to see how all these things play out. But to your point, what I believe will happen is the market will become easier and easier to participate in, and more farmers will be making a choice to look at cannabis crops, whether it's for THC, for CBD, for CBG. CBN, I think, is going to be popular in the coming years, where we can just take this THC and throw it in a room and let it degrade down and get our CBN that way.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
It's just, I think that the applicability for your knowledge on how to best grow cannabis in this sandy soil, with our humidity, with our our environmental challenges, will be used. I think when I think about the Delmarva Peninsula and the long-term play of cannabis, I believe that you will see us turn into a hub. I think from a agricultural distribution, to be so close to New York, Philly, DC, Virginia, Norfolk, you have a huge market right there, right?
Yep. And beyond the sales point of it too, literally from a growing perspective, you just can't grow it everywhere. You know what I mean? Like you go too far south, it's too humid. If you go too far north, they actually don't have a long enough season. Anywhere that you can grow good grapes and you grow good tobacco is where you think it's going to be the best weed in the nation. So always think about that.
Grapes and tobacco.
Yep. So we have a good wine industry around here. Virginia grows amazing tobacco.
We used to grow a lot of tobacco in Maryland.
Yep. So we will thrive as a farming community for sure.
Interesting. Are there similarities to growing a tobacco plant and cannabis plant?
It can be kind of similar. The humidity isn't as much of an issue for tobacco, and tobacco has also been selected for so long.
The
genetics are so tied down that plant's going to be very easy to grow compared to cannabis. That's the part that I was talking about there with selections. We got to figure that out with the cannabis plant still, which ones are going to grow everywhere.
You mentioned that, I lost my train of thought, but we were talking about tobacco and the ease of use of it, and then my head went to the drying of hemp. So how did you guys dry this year?
So I do a slow and low. So basically we have a drying facility. It's a really nice little warehouse that's completely just cleaned out, mopped, sweeped, alcohol the walls down, all that fun stuff. Treat it just like I do at the medical facility in Maryland. And essentially whole plant hang. That way you're getting all of the benefits of the plant. You want all the sugars to run down.
And that's how you're keeping the terpenes high.
Yep, keeping high terpene content. And I think the best part is, before I even talk about the drying process, the harvest process. This is something you'll not hear anyone else do. Camped out overnight, woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and started chopping to make sure that all the plants were done before the sun was up. And the reason you do that, it's actually a much higher terpene content. Your plants are going to dump a bunch of terpenes before the sun pops up. It's its defense mechanism for when the bugs, the mildew starts to form, the terpenes, the trichomes. That's how it protects itself. And then also, as the sun comes out, your heat starts to rise, so you actually start to degrade the product right away. So made sure all the plants were inside before that sun popped up. We got it right on the last dot. Had our coffee as we were putting that last plant up in the rafters. It was nice.
That's awesome, man. That's really, that's so cool.
Yep, so then slow and low from there. Basically, we go about 10 to 14 days on the dry. I'd like to go 20, but we actually had some drier weather, so it kind of helped us out. And then after that, man, I had a trim team help me take it down, trim it all up, and here we are.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. We have it available in the eighth, or also pre-rolls, depending upon what your flavor is. Do you have any idea of what next season looks like? Have you started looking down the road?
Actually, I'm already picking up seeds, talking to all my breeders now, trying to figure out what's going to work with here, figuring out what breeders want me to help them make selections for all the other stuff they're working with. So that's going down as we speak, starting to get ready.
So
Never really ends, actually.
I find that it's a thin line for me, and don't take this personal, but I feel like sometimes when I talk to other people that are knowledgeable in genetics, I get genetic broed.
Yeah, sure.
And it's like it can be overwhelming sometimes as someone who's been. I find that I'm incredibly knowledgeable about cannabis, but I still am learning more and more about the genetics. And like we had a team meeting the other day, and I was talking about product selection, utilizing terpene profiles. And one of my employees is like, well, terpene profiles only matter so much. Genetics are at play too. There could be things that have very low terpene profiles, but because the genetics are good, it feels better. And like,
there is other parts to it other than
there's flavonoids, right?
Yeah,
there's
the
other
flavonoids and esters.
I struggle with the fact that like, so I personally would want to believe that okay, genetics play a role, but those genetics should be able to be demonstrated in some kind of a test. Now, maybe it's not a terpene test, maybe it's a flavonoid test, maybe it's other chemical components that are genetically proprietary to that specific strain.
Sure,
but this idea that like just because it's called this certain name, it's gonna hit a certain way. Like
I think that the names have just been a great indicator of what you can expect from it, but chemotypes nowadays are also different. Like, and by chemotype I mean what comparison you're going to find. Generally, a THC percentage around 23, and these plants have limonene. Like, these are all going to be like your OG, your chem dogs, your sour diesel plants. These are all within the same kind of chemotype, right? Like, they're a very similar type of profile. You can expect things by using the names as an indicator, but using the name to assume any sort of feeling or anything like that's going to be kind of hard, you know?
Yeah, and I think from a consumer standpoint, it's overwhelming to expect them to try to be able to trace down the genetics of every strain or everything we're throwing at them.
I agree with you.
And that from a product selection standpoint, although not perfect, I still believe that this is what I do. I open up the door and I don't look at any of our online menus. I go right to the constant. I do smoke a lot. I do smoke a lot more flower now than I've ever have in the existence of you knowing me. Sure. But I'm still primarily for my medical usage using concentrates. I walk in, I grab the bin. I never look at THC content. I just start looking for high limonene and pinene profiles for my morning, and then I'm looking for some linalool, I look for high myrcene all the time. It doesn't, for me, I know some people find myrcene to be like more relaxing and stuff, but I find it settles my anxiety.
Keeps you from going over the edge.
Yeah, that it helps balance some of that limonene.
Yeah,
the pinene is the most racy of them all, right?
Yeah.
And that can really make me, it can make me just overly focused on the wrong things. Is probably the easiest way to say.
Chasing your tail around the house.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And just let my mind run without a good spot. And then the opposite of that is, let's say I'm going to like a ball game or something. Let's say I'm going to something that's like a fun event and my mind is there. When I smoke limonene, it's like drinking a Red Bull.
Yeah.
Pining. It's like I'm drinking a Red Bull.
It's like having a good time.
It's just extra energy and like I feel it. So like I really understand time and circumstance with my terpene profiles, and like everything is based upon that. And I feel that through that process over the last couple of years, like my ability to medicate and know what's going to happen and get my expectations on point, like I can't tell you the last time that I was surprised.
Yeah, that's always a good feeling.
It is a good feeling.
And that's why we're very lucky that we are at a point where cannabinoids and terpenes can be measured, so we do get an idea of what we're looking at. It will be hard once they get a hold of like the esters and all the other flavonoids and the things that make up the other part of it, which I have no idea what kind of testing would be involved.
What's an ester?
So ester is, so think of like alcohol.
Okay.
Like alcohol is all based off of ethanol alcohol, so you get the same kind of effect. Cannabis puts off different types of ester profiles of alcohol, essentially, meaning that different consumptions are going to give you different feelings. So like you drink a bottle of wine and you drink a bottle of beer, you're going to generally feel the same kind of effects. But it's different when it goes to ester alcohols. You actually might get different contents based off the amount of esters involved.
It's interesting. I love learning about these other chemical components that are equally as important that in 5 years or 10 years you'll probably see on your in your testing
Hopefully on
program.
your jar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
I think the big one for
you're like,
me,
bro,
like,
I don't even that flavonoid. Like, nah.
for me, like flavonoids is the big one I'm working with right now because of the Pink Panther. A lot of the top buds are dark purple, and that dark purple is actually called anthocyanin. That's something in every plant that's purple. Lavender plants has anthocyanin, etc. And anthocyanin itself has a flavor. I taste purple, and like you've heard people say it through the years, like, oh yeah, I know what purple weed tastes like, and that's that anthocyanin. So for me, I'm trying to figure out the flavonoids. What are they? What part of them? What do they taste like? And
They're
things
probably
like
similar
that.
to the lavender plant, right?
100%.
And then, if I'm understanding you correctly, you said the tops of the plants are expressing that, and the bottoms of the plants are not.
Sure. Yep. The apical
So
buds.
even within that same plant, picking buds off the top, picking
Yep.
buds off the bottom would have a much different.
100%. Yeah. So your apical bud, aka the top nugget, your big cola, that's always going to get the most light, the most expression to the air and the conditions. Some of that stuff that's on the inside of the plant doesn't always get as much light and doesn't get as much air. So you might not get as much color, or you might get a little bit of a different kind of flavor. It might have more trichome content because it wasn't hit by the sunlight. There's all different kinds of factors that go into play.
So that would, in my mind, not that I'm trying to say that I'm right, but that's why lab testing again is so much more important because that's the same plant, it's the same genetics,
And
it's
it's
the
going to give you
same
different numbers.
everything,
Yep.
and it could vary in difference, and we
100%.
know that.
Yep.
And I feel that. Let me ask you before I tell you my uneducated answer. If you had to look at a pie chart and they said, okay, what percentage is genetics, what percentage is operator growth, like your success in a plant? Is it 50-50 because with bad genetics, the best operator can't grow it? With good genetics, a bad operator could look better than he is? Like,
I think you're right with that. I think it's apples and oranges almost, where it's like a good cultivar, no matter what. Like GMO is a really good example. You just cannot mess GMO up. It's just going to be good, and it's going to always wash good. It's always going to be good hash. So no matter what you do, it's going to be a good product. But if you're a better grower, it's going to be a better product for sure. You know what I mean? But you can't mess it up again. But there's something like OG. Like OG is just a hard plant to grow. So somebody who can't grow it well, they're not going to succeed. That's just the facts of it. So I think it's just...
is the OG tall and skinny?
It's tall and it's lanky. It depends what OG you're working with, but they're mostly viney plants. We call them shooty, grapey plants. They're floppy. They love mold. They love bugs. Like you just got to baby them. I mean, there's nothing we like about OG other than smoking OG.
That's awesome. So you're gonna go through some of those kind of like R&D processes over the next couple of months, and then, I mean, damn, are you a month away from back in the hothouse again?
Yeah, absolutely. And then actually working with another farm as well. I'd done another plot in Delaware as well. Those people just turned everything over into a lotion tincture type deal. This year they're going to also do a smokable flower plot, so I'll be working with them as well. I think what we're going to also do is work with some of the other farms on doing some nursery style. Basically, I'll do these R&D projects for these seed companies, and we're going to help give those clones out to all the local nursery or the local farms and things like that. So I think that's what the big deal is this year for me. I don't think we're going to work so much on the smokable flower as far as the FTC goes. The farm I'll be working with, those guys will be doing flower, but I think I'll be doing the nursery stuff this year.
And what will that consist of when you say
Consist of me basically over the winter. I'm going to do some pheno hunts in that hothouse, and we'll actually flower them right out. And I'll actually take all of those plants separately to testing, and I'll be able to take the clones of the mothers of those and cut new clones. And then whatever testing I like, we'll actually be able to give those clones out to the farmers. So if it's it's got to obviously not be hot, under that 0.3% THC, and then whatever CBD numbers they like or CBG numbers they like, the farmers that have their legal permits next year will be able to buy those clones off of me.
Tell me what your process is for testing along the way.
It's along the way.
Is it not?
I tell people to hold off as long as they can. That's such a money game where you should know your harvest window. You should be talking to your breeders. They should tell you, hey, after 50 days you might go hot, or hey, after 60 days. So around 50 days, if the plant to me, because I'm a grower, I'm a very I have my experience. I know when the plant's going to finish up. I can take my trichome scope out, look at it, and say these are starting to develop milky trichomes. We need to go ahead and chop this plant down. If they go amber, then I'm probably already in the THC zone. So I just knew myself when to harvest, but for most people, yeah, they have to pay for testing. They'll take buds and buds and buds, and basically thousands of dollars later, they're like, all right, cool, we found one plant that's worth chopping down. And you're like, no, you just got to know what you're looking for. And then any of the stuff that doesn't look the same phenotype wise, if I've got 50 purple plants and there's one green plant to the side, I'm going to assume he's probably not going to test the same as those other ones. We got to get rid of him. And it's more about the experience than it is, I think, the actual lab part of that part of it.
Was 2018 the largest participation of farmers in Maryland that we saw?
Yeah.
And then what kind of participation do you expect next year? Do you expect even less farmers than this most recent? Like, is
I
it
would hope
continue to keep
not.
going down, or have we hit like a bell curve?
I think it's going to keep going down personally, just because every time I talk to someone, they're like, yeah, next year we're going to do less and less and less, and that's not what I like to hear. It's not usually a good sign. So I do think it's going down. But again, I think it's a lot of inexperienced farmers are the ones that are, kind of pulling out.
The 2018 season was one of the largest. It
was a shit show, man.
It was fuckery. I was going to say, I was trying to say the demonstration of fuckery I'd ever seen in my entire life. I had walked out to one particular farm and saw 6-foot fucking plants that were taller than me. They were beautiful. They had to be hot. And they never even got harvested. They were fighting in the field, couldn't get them out. People that got them out of the field didn't get them dried properly. Even the people that did everything right didn't have a buyer. I mean, it was just complete chaos. Complete chaos. And I knew that 2019 couldn't be the same. And now it seems like there's like less and less, but it also seems like the folks that I'm talking to now are at least 2 or 3 seasons in. They seem much more experienced. I went to the UMES. UMES had a field day where they brought me out to go check out their field trials. Believe it or not, a kid that I used to coach in lacrosse was running their field trials for the hemp program. He was finishing up grad school in Australia when COVID happened. Australia kicked everybody out. He ended up at home looking for something to do and ended up landing in a hemp, hemp
Dechny's got an awesome program over there, man. That's one of those guys that...
Eric Lindsay is, I don't know if you ran into him or not, but he's like a little guy. He looks actually a lot like, you guys kind of a lot in common. A little lanky, little scrankly dude.
I'll have to get over there and meet him, man.
He's a super great dude. Like, he really is really, really smart. And really took a lot of ownership over this program. And they had 50 strains out in the fields this year, and you got to see, you got to see firsthand in a very short, small space, just how much the cannabis plant can vary.
The phenotypical
the
expressions.
Phenotypes of the purple and the green and the tall and the skinny and the sick and the healthy and
the caterpillar lovers and the
yeah, I mean, and some of these plants look like death, and then some look like they couldn't be happier, and they're in the same field, right? Like they were exposed to a lot of the same elements. It's just interesting that I learned that, and then even more interesting, and I would argue somewhat skeptical on my part, was seeing the folks in Crisfield.
Sure.
Did you see they announced Carver Hall, where they used to make knives?
Oh, the large building.
They're going to grow hemp indoors.
Yeah.
And I believe, and they were very upfront about this, that it's their hope is to basically to do R&D on hemp plants that can be applied to the cannabis space. With the hopes of ideally then getting a cannabis license for that facility.
Sure.
There's no clear path to them to get a license at this time, so it's a little bit of a dream for them, which is cool.
That's cool.
But I haven't necessarily seen hemp grown indoors in a economically...
Yeah, I've seen it grown indoors in a few places. It's definitely not economically feasible, and to me, it kind of defeats... I think it's an oxymoron. Obviously,
you want the super strong plant that you don't need to grow inside, right? Like if you're going to grow inside, why not grow some plant that can't grow outside?
That too, and it's like we're trying to create these plants for an overall holistic wellness where we're trying to better the earth and people, but then we're going to also burn a ton of electricity and gas and all this stuff to grow it,
Right,
right?
because these folks, they use a lot of energy.
Exactly.
I mean, they use a ton
It's
of
extremely
energy.
cost inefficient. Outdoors the way to go, and that's why we're super big on the organic. We do a bunch of different no-till methods. We did what's called hugelkulture this year, where we dug deep holes. We cut down some trees that needed to be removed from the property, chop those up, fill the holes, and you make these large mounds, and those mounds basically crush to the earth and become the fertilizer that you need for the plants. So we do these things because this is what people want, right? This is what we're doing is for a holistic and natural future, right? We're not going to go set up a bunch of HPS lights and, get a big old, carbon filter set up so we can grow hemp. Because, again, I think we're kind of defeating the purpose there. We're not
I think it's a really
healing
valid
much at
point.
that
I mean, from a curiosity standpoint, when I go into these cultivation facilities, I'm always interested in their HVAC and RO systems because they are so huge and so
Massive.
sophisticated.
Yeah.
But the side effect is that these guys, they eat up a ton of fucking energy.
Yep.
And if you want to be, the folks that are buying our products, or most of them are moving to our products because they're natural, because
Exactly.
they want to get away from things that are made in factories. And I do believe that the outside and outdoor, and I literally haven't met a cultivar worth their grain of salt that thinks growing indoors is better than outdoors. They just know that for them to be able to hit their numbers, be able to guarantee patients medicine, having that controlled facility and controlled environment is the best way to control your predictability of having good medicine, not necessarily to grow the best medicine indoors.
Sure. And it generally, it's always commercially feasible to be growing indoors, but then you always see the guys that grow a little bit outdoors always have the craft product to me. And that's what I was kind of going for with the CBD. I wanted to make sure that we hit on a special market. I wanted to make sure that it was organic as possible so that we're kind of making sure that the people that are enjoying the product are getting the best of it.
No, it's phenomenal product. It's absolutely great. I purchased some for myself. We have it available at Peninsula Wellness. You can buy it online. Thank you so much, Cam, for joining me today. I look forward to having you. Maybe come back maybe in the middle of grow season.
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
You're super busy
and
have nothing else to do.
Right.
Maybe you can come sit down with me for a little bit.
How about I get you guys out in the field to check it out? 99 degrees and 80%.
Maybe Brandon can take me on a field trip.
That'd be super
We
fun.
got a gimbal. We'll make it happen.
Well, thanks again for having me on, guys. I really do appreciate
pleasure,
it.
man.
And if you
If you
guys
wanna-
want to check anything out, the freethinkersconservation.com is up and running. We're also on Instagram under the Freethinkers Conservation. And then our product is only at Peninsula Wellness right now. So definitely come check it out.
Yep. If you're listening to this and you're local, December 8th, 10 to 12, come check out Cam downstairs. This is open to the public. You don't need a card. You can share this with your friends and be completely within Maryland state law. I do also like the fact that when you purchase Free Thinkers CBD, it actually even comes with a little card for law enforcement. And lots of different ways of looking how cannabis and law enforcement interact, but I always think that leading with education and giving them an opportunity to teach them something is a good opportunity. And if someone were to pull you over and have a question and you had a pre-printed card, said, "Officer, I understand you may be concerned about what you see here, but here's my card. This is completely legal under the Farm Bill," and blah, blah, blah. It's going to make them feel a lot more at ease than if you have a jar and say, "Hey, you can't fuck with me. It's the CBD." So I prefer to go the earlier route.
Yeah, absolutely.
Either way, you're legal.
Yeah, as much as I'd like to see you have some of my product leaving, I feel much better if you're leaving with education or at least a peace of mind,
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining me today. Check Cam out, Free Thinkers Conservation.
Thanks, guys.